So since we're talking about drownings and scary bodies of water, basically, have you guys heard of the actress Natalie Wood?
Yes.
You've heard of her?
Yep.
Okay.
Wood.
So Natalie Wood, for those of you who do not know, she was in Miracle on 34th Street, Rebel Without a Cause, West Side Story, the original one. She was like the biggest actress at the time. So Natalie Wood, when she was a little kid and like accidentally almost drowned in water and broke her wrist, so she couldn't like swim.
Oh, shit.
Apparently her wrist was broken to the point where like her mom never got it fixed, and it was like deformed, so she wore bracelets and stuff to like hide that. Super sad. She was terrified of water after that, to the point where I guess she was really afraid to wash her own hair, and she never learned how to swim. It was just something, she stayed away from water. She ended up marrying Robert Wagner, which was also a huge actor at the time. I think in Heart to Heart, it was some TV show. They were a Hollywood power couple. It was a big deal. Ended up being a really toxic relationship. They divorced. She married somebody else. They divorced. She got back with him. Apparently it was on and off fighting and arguing and stuff like that. She was doing a movie with Christopher Walken, and apparently hers and his on screen or off screen romance was like kind of getting a little heated. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. So, I mean, have you seen Christopher Walken from back then? No? Yes. I don't think he's super attractive, but like, look at him when he was younger. Like, he's decent.
He's not ugly.
No, not ugly at all.
No, he's not ugly.
Him and Sleepy Hollow, though, I gotta say.
He's intense in that movie.
Oh, the sharp teeth, I'm into it. Anyway, so to get back to reality.
You're into the sharp teeth. That's
Yeah, something about it. So anyway.
Sharp teeth. Hoo ha ha.
Robert Wagner, being a very jealous man, he heard about this, and him and Natalie both got to a point where they were going on a couple, like a 3-day cruise around Thanksgiving time. They invited Christopher Walken to go with them on the cruise. And him and Robert Wagner weren't really like friends. He was just working with Natalie Wood at the time. So you can kind of see where this is going.
I did. That's weird.
Yeah, it's a little, I mean, first night that they're on the cruise, apparently everything's fine for a little bit. And then Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood get into such a heated argument that it makes Christopher Walken like leave the room. And keep in mind, there's only 4 people on this boat: Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken, and the captain. So they get into such a big fight that the captain actually takes Natalie Wood on the dinghy. I knew you guys were gonna laugh.
Wood on the dinghy.
He puts her on the dinghy.
He puts her on the dinghy. Well, actually, that's kind of where this is going. So he puts her on the dinghy, and then they sail back to Catalina Island. Actually, it's called Avalon. I don't know if they're the same island or not, but he takes her back to shore. And he tells the police later on, they actually stayed on the boat that night. He didn't know the police had evidence showing that he took her back on shore. And not only that, but they stayed in the same hotel room drinking wine together, which he ended up confessing, like, yeah, that happened, but I'm very protective over her. And like, her and I have a very special relationship, and I just want to make sure she was safe. But at the same time, I just got a weird vibe from it. Something about
like
this.
that.
But it kind of does come out a little bit later that this captain is a little bit infatuated with her.
You killed her, didn't you?
So, well, not only is she on this boat, like, she's this beautiful young actress, she's on a boat with 3 men that are all very, I would say, obsessed with her almost. You know
what? What did she do for all of them to be in love with her?
No, I mean, she definitely wasn't. I mean, she was flirting, quite a bit with Christopher Walken.
Yeah, you were.
I have no idea what happened.
Hoe.
Nah, hey, come on, guys.
That's not unsolicited.
That's not where this is going.
Let's be for real.
Anyway, the next day, they go back to the ship. They all talk. They go on to shore. Everything's okay. They go to dinner. During dinner, Christopher Walken and Natalie Wood start flirting pretty heavily, like to the point where it actually like causes kind of a heated argument. But it's claimed that they were discussing political stuff when it got heated. And from there, the conversation went back to the ship. But I was kind of thinking about it. Have you guys read or seen The Great Gatsby?
I
Yes.
love that book.
Thank you.
And I love that movie.
Thank you. I love the movie
I love
too.
them both.
I think the movie's fantastic. And
The
a lot of
movie's
people,
great.
A lot of people don't like the movie. I
enjoyed
love
the
that
I'm
movie.
movie.
upset by that because that movie
I've
was
watched it a few
great.
They
times.
did such a good job.
They did great.
So you know the scene when finally Jay and Tom Buchanan meet and are discussing like kind of like class-oriented stuff, like political discussion, and then it eventually goes into the discussion about like, I love Daisy. No, she doesn't love you. She loves me. That kind of thing.
Yes.
That's exactly how I feel this played out at dinner. Maybe not necessarily like at dinner, but when they get back to the ship, because they are discussing this on the dinghy when they get back onto the ship. Apparently nothing happened, but then it comes out later on that Robert Wagner like broke a wine bottle and screamed at Christopher Walken, "What, are you trying to fuck my wife?"
The latest thing is to sit back and let Mr. Nobody from nowhere make love to your wife.
Oh.
So you knew it was heated, but apparently Christopher Walken and Robert Wagner said that never happened. And then later on it came out that it did.
What the
Or that night when there was a big argument, apparently Christopher Walken went back in his estate room or his room. The captain went back to his quarters, and then it was just Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood. Robert Wagner claims they got into a fight and just went their separate ways. And that was it until the next morning when they found her floating in the ocean. She was still in her nightgown, her socks, and she had a jacket on. So it's not like she was trying to go swimming. This girl wouldn't go swimming, you know? Middle of the night. They had been drinking all night. I will say that. And people do dumb things when they're drinking. Mm-hmm. But what Robert Wagner thinks happened is that she tried to get in the dinghy and must have slipped and hit her head. But he also lied about the fight that happened the night before. He lied about, initially he said that he wasn't with her, and then he was with her out on the boat, like out on the outside of the boat. Christopher Walken apparently didn't, like the last time he saw them was when they were inside the boat, but then later on he claimed that he saw them outside the boat. Even the captain lied about like where everything was. So it's like, what happened to Natalie?
What is this like?
No one, to this day, they don't know what happened. But
all three of them.
They just reopened the case too, after however many years.
Yes.
You know, her sister Lana has been on this like obsessively since then.
I would be too.
And she's been finding Robert and like trying to question him and interview him.
Why won't you speak to the detectives? They're super guys.
She doesn't think that he actually like meant to kill Natalie, but he thinks that he accidentally killed Natalie and like covered it up, which
oops.
I do believe that. I don't think that this girl would have been so pissed off. She would have like tried to get in the dinghy and go back, like, cause she didn't know how to handle the dinghy. She would always have someone else do it for her. He had this big thing, like, I think she must have slipped and tried to get in and this happened and she must have bumped her head. But like his his statement, like thinking this happened was so spot on, if that makes sense. It's almost kind of like O.J. Simpson's book, how if I would have done it or how,
you push her home.
if I did it. Yeah, like, sure, dude. I feel like he did it. There's so many inconsistencies with everybody's story. But when you think about it, you have celebrities who are drinking, adding the fact that they're all infatuated with the same girl. It's just a recipe for disaster. And the poor girl, unfortunately, suffered the consequences of that. I will
be following that case.
I watched a whole documentary about it a couple years ago, and it was super fascinating. Like, I just told the Cliff Notes version, but there's so many inconsistencies in the story.
That is wild.
It's weird when you think about Christopher Walken, like, being there during a murder, you know?
Yeah.
We wouldn't think of that with that guy.
Christopher.
Yeah. No more cowbell that night.
No, more cowbell.
More cowbell.
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell.